All right, so here we go. We are recording now, and we're discussing the Dyatlov Pass incident as well as the remote viewing session that followed. So we can learn a little bit more about what happened, what might have actually happened during this mystery. And so I have my wife and fellow podcaster, Bailey Rush, and I
Hello.
also have, oh, and I also have Anita Ikonen, our remote viewer.
Yes, hello.
Okay. I said all this like it's a live show, but
Yeah.
yay,
We
here
have
we
a
are.
show. This is awesome. It's a
Yeah.
show.
So
All
excited
right.
to be here. Well, thank you, Fabian, for introducing us. So I guess I will just start by saying a couple of opening remarks for people who might be viewing this for the first time on YouTube. So my husband and I have a podcast show where we talk about extraterrestrial and paranormal and mysterious unsolved mystery topics. And episode 3 was one that I led, and that was in regards to the Dyatlov Pass incident. So if you're not familiar with that incident, I highly recommend that you listen to episode 3 before you watch this video, because this video will make a lot more sense if you know what the Dyatlov Pass incident is. And if you already do know, then welcome. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Do you want to do a quick summary of the incident before we get into the remote viewing results?
Absolutely. So the Dyatlov Pass incident is one of Russia's greatest unsolved mysteries. It involves the mysterious disappearance and very unusual deaths of 9 young ski hikers that disappeared in the Ural Mountains. I believe it was 1959. I should have looked that up. But it was a long time ago. They were going on what was supposed to be a challenging but routine ski hiking trip into the wilderness. They disappeared. They were missing for well over 2 or 3 weeks before their bodies were unfortunately discovered. And several of those bodies were discovered in such a way that led people to think that this was not a normal natural death or typical snow skiing accident.
Okay.
We'll start there.
Sounds like that's a good sum up there. So,
Yeah.
so now to transition into the remote viewing work that has been done, I'm going to read the remote viewing intention and target cue. So we'll know exactly how I worded this.
Great.
Now, this project was actually assigned to Anita on September 23rd of 2023. So we're covering this quite a bit later.
Yeah.
But so the target intention, attempt to understand the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident, where 9 experienced campers died under unusual circumstances. So the actual target cue that Anita would have been working with is the remote viewer will perceive and sketch the event and reason why 9 campers abandoned their tent and belongings on Mount Kohot,
Coatzacoalcos.
Coatzacoalcos in the Ural Mountains, Siberia, Soviet Union, in February of 1959.
Yes, I got it right.
Yes. So there goes the actual cue. And from there, I guess before we jump right into everything, Anita, would you like to start with some of your initial impressions?
Initial impressions, indeed. Let's see. I have my 31-page text report here. Oh my gosh. Like I said, I tried to read this whole thing for our talk. I wasn't able. It's so much. I've read the first part carefully and I skimmed through the rest. And obviously I made this, so I know the material. Right away, I have a creature which is, I'll just read from the actual report, my initial impressions. Something in a tight space trying to get loose. It looks and feels like someone twisting slowly while standing still, a panic sensation, someone screaming, a horrible horror and fear, suffocation. Someone's hair got stuck, someone got ripped off. It was like its skin with hair got ripped off, like skinning an animal to have the skin come off. Horrible pain, something screams and tries to get loose. Its hair got stuck and then it got thrown into an elevator. Now, elevator is an early name I have for something which you can go inside and it will move, take you away. It's kicking with its back legs that are against something which reminds me of the elevator. There is just dreadful fear. Someone screams inside of a box, and it just starts like that. So right away, I have a life form which is trapped and struggling and screaming and undergoing damage to its body. And to me, in the beginning, I can't really see what's happening. I see blurry shapes and outlines, and I know it's a life form, and there are two life forms fighting. One is a victim, and it will die. So very clear signal, very strong. Yeah.
Excellent.
And then I
Strong
continue to explore the elements that I get and unfold more of the story.
Great.
And it gets very bizarre, very bizarre.
Yes. And now that was an actual perfect place for you to stop there, because I'd love, Bailey also was reading a lot of detail into the opening of your remote viewing session. So Bailey, if you'd like to share some of your thoughts and some of the highlights you found in
Yeah.
Anita's opening.
Absolutely. So I, like most of the first 2 pages of your report, I have just highlighted everything because there's
Yeah,
so
me too. I was going to highlight
yeah.
just the interesting bits, but it's completely
Yeah,
yellow.
you were just so on point, like right off the bat. And I found that to be really interesting. And now I'll take just a second to just for perhaps listeners of our show that don't know remote viewing well, you did not know you were viewing the Dyatlov Pass at all, right? This was a completely hidden...
blind target. All I get is a number with basically the date, today's date from Fabian, and I have no clues. Well, I did kind of assume it was going to be a mystery target because it was for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I might have expected UFOs, but I wouldn't have expected this.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I had no clues, nothing. It could have been anything at all.
Great. I find that so amazing based on what you've said here in your first couple of pages. So you already read a lot of it, but all of this stuff about these something in a tight space trying to get loose, panic sensation, screaming, the trapped feeling. Down here about halfway through the first page, you were leaning towards something orange, something that slithers almost around the life form. And maybe, slithering, you were kind of not sure about that word, but it makes sense to me later. The orange is I'm quoting here. The orange is an entrapment device, causes someone not to be able to speak. It's like over the mouth so that one cannot speak and almost cannot breathe, a feeling like having a bag over the mouth or the head. And that to me was just amazing. Like my heart skipped a few beats because what we know is that all 9 of these people were sleeping we assume they were sleeping in this really long, skinny tent. They were all together, and it was a handmade, like a homemade tent. And at some point it collapsed around them or was pushed or something. And it seems as though these people cut their way out from the inside. So that to me says that they were trapped in the tent. And this being 1959, all of the photos are black and white, but I am willing to bet money that the tent was some sort of orangey rust brown color. So that was so fascinating to me.
I just have to intervene there. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Because when I have a life form, it starts out as a red blur always. When I have an item, it starts out as an orange element always. So the orange, it's kind of hard to read my report when you don't know how it works, but orange basically means in the beginning, when I get it on the first few pages, it just means item,
Oh, okay.
basically. So it could be
Oh,
an
okay.
orange, but
Fascinating.
yeah.
Okay, great. Well, either way, I thought that that was very interesting. And so beyond the orange part, everything else was on point. I just imagined like this canvas material collapsing on their faces and covering their mouths and pressing in on them, making it hard for them to breathe. And you said all of that so in such detail. I found that very fascinating.
Yeah.
You said it can't be taken off. It's like cling wrap. I was like, oh, it made me viscerally feel like their struggle to breathe through this collapsing tent.
Yeah, it's very
Wow. And then you
descriptive
wrote
in the
somebody
report.
screams, "Let me out of here."
Yeah,
Ah,
Bailey,
I heard it.
everything you just said is 100% what I experienced when I was reading her data as well. I
yeah.
read it and my jaw dropped because
Yeah.
you said the word visceral. Like
Yeah.
it was like reading Anita's words here. I can picture the like a tight wrap around somebody's face where you can see the impression of their face and they're trying to breathe in and you see it like in
Like they're sucking in the
the
fabric. Ugh.
exactly. I saw that so clearly reading her words.
Yeah.
And it was so it was scary. And going back to what the actual target cue was, where I say the reason why 9 campers abandoned their tent and belongings. So Anita started immediately at the tent, which
Yeah.
so she went straight for the portion of target that I mentioned, and I love that she expanded from there.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what, so immediately reading this, really like there was no dilly-dallying. It was immediately right to the target, right to the event, right to a terrible situation, which
Yeah.
caused them to abandon their tent. Uh,
Yeah.
so we know that they cut their way out. So
Yeah.
already we've got verifiable stuff. And the
Hmm.
exciting thing is the less verifiable stuff that is to come.
Yes.
So we know they abandoned their tent. And Bailey, do you recall about how far they ran? And
Yes, I think it was up to 1.5 kilometers away.
yeah, in
Um,
the
yeah.
snow, in the
Hmm.
middle of the
Without their
night.
shoes, right?
Without their shoes. And I noticed you mentioned
I get
several
that from
times.
the, sorry, I have to
Yeah.
mention because I said without the shoes. I get that
Yes.
from later from the feedback from reading about it. That was not in my report, whether they had shoes or not. So
It's
Wow.
true, but I think your original report did mention that several times because you kept saying the phrase, I'm trying to scroll through here to look at my highlights, but you several times mentioned the phrase that like we have no feet or our feet are gone. And that to me indicated like they have no shoes on, the hypothermia is setting in, they can't feel their feet anymore. And I
oh,
found
okay.
that really fascinating. You mentioned
Mhm.
that several times, something about how they don't have feet or they've lost their feet or they can't feel them. And wow, that
Yeah.
was amazing to me as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now, Anita, is there anything you want to throw in at this point? This is probably going to be around the body of your session. Is there anything? There are a few things that jump out at me that we're going to get to with your summary. After they run from the tent, is there anything that you'd like to add in? Things that you kind of experienced that were highlights in your session that you might have really picked up on that you wanted to mention here?
There's so much data in my report. Really, anyone who's
Yeah.
interested needs to read it because
Yeah.
there's no way I can pick this thing or that thing. Let me just look at some of my highlights if there's anything.
Yes. I think what we'll
Um,
do is post your report. We can probably post it somewhere. Um,
Sure.
yeah.
there's a lot. It will come later, the interesting
Okay.
stuff.
Sounds
I
good.
think.
And
Yeah.
Bailey, any interesting highlights kind of from the body? I want to get to what the mystery seems to be pointing at some point soon, but I don't want to skip over anything.
Yeah, no, I think there, like she said, there's not enough time in the world for us to cover all of the interesting points that she said. But I guess I'll just cover one more thing where one of the the things that the incident is pretty well known for that bothers me a lot is that several of the bodies were missing their eyes. And some people say that that's just because of the natural body decaying processes, which certainly it could be. The bodies in question were not found for, I believe, a month, but they were also in Siberia. So it's a bit cold. So any natural decomposition would have been particularly slowed. And there were a couple of things that she mentioned in her notes that went along with directly with the eyes. And I'll read another quote here. Also, Anita, what does IP mean?
Initial probe. It's one of the different kinds of tools with which I touch the elements.
Great. Okay,
Means
so
I
this,
put my hands on the thing to pat it around a bit.
gotcha. So that's your initial impression, what you first sense when you're probing that particular subject. Great. So this is one of your IPs, and you say, hot, a fight mechanism being used for battle. It goes into eyes and pokes them out. It goes into guts too and takes out membranes. It's being used for dissection of a membrane. And I can see it too, but then it is too late to battle with it. That made me squeamish because that was pretty on point for the eyes. I have always thought that the eyes were removed somehow. And to me, that was pretty impactful.
I would say here, I don't know if, since you hopefully didn't read the entire report because it's huge, I can't even read it, half of it. I saw later in session, I was in a room. There's a body on a table, and another life form is removing parts from this body. One of the things I distinctly see is that the eyeball is removed, and how this person or whoever it was grabs like scissors and cuts the stringy bits behind the eye
Oh my
in
goodness.
order to remove the eyes.
Wow.
Yes, that's what I
Wow.
saw.
Harsh.
That's
is-
how eyes were removed. That's in my report. It's in my summary
Wow.
that the eyes are removed.
That is intense.
And here
They
I would
were-
like to.
I would just, sorry, Fabian, before I forget. They, in my session, see, I'm blind. I don't know that what it's supposed to be.
Right.
They were removing all the parts of the victim's body that are parts that they don't need. And we will get to what was actually needed, what they were actually doing. But the bits and
Wow.
pieces that they don't want to keep because they don't need them off on the victim were being removed, kind of like, get rid of this. We don't need the eyes, get rid of it. They were removing other bits too, according to my session.
Wow.
Oh
Yeah.
my, very uncomfortable. And
Very, I
while
was there, Fabian. I was
Yes,
in the
I'm
room
so
watching
sorry.
it. I was
sorry
like,
for
oh my God, I'm there. Hope they don't see me.
sorry for sending you to such
Yeah.
a nasty place. But while we're discussing the bodies, I'm going to share my screen and show the image of that Anita did of one of the corpses here. So here's the image.
Can I tell you about?
Yes,
Yeah,
I want
please
to
do.
start right here and remind all the viewers that this image, when Anita told me that she was finished with her remote viewing session, she sent me her whole session, including this image. And then within an hour, I sent her the feedback that what she was reviewing, what she was remote viewing, were the was the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Right.
So when I first saw this image and several others, I thought, wow, this is very interesting. Anita then watched after she knew what she was remote viewing, she went online and she also found a few things. And this next image here is an image directly from the photography of the Dyatlov Pass. So here we are. This is one of the corpses of the Dyatlov Pass. If you just pay close attention to the similarities between these two images, not looking at the eyes, because obviously we know that eyes were removed. But Anita, if you look at the teeth and the skin texture as well as that stringy hair in the back. Every like this is very clearly, I think, what she was seeing.
I agree.
And the patchy color on the skin we can also see on this image.
Yes. Yeah.
This
So
I would say, I think I worked day and a half or maybe 2 days on this session. I put in a lot of time, not just an hour. I
No.
work hard a long time. So towards the end of the session is when I start getting, so I start with very blurry colored shapes in the very beginning. And as I keep working, I will eventually get full clear visuals. I will see very clearly like exactly what is there. So this is the last of several drawings that I made. This is the last drawing. The last drawing is always the clearest and the best and the full visual, as I call it, when I really see everything. This
I'll pull up a few more of your images as well after this
this
one.
was, I'm sorry to laugh. I mean, no disrespect, but so I've been working on this target, trying to be sitting at home, being very respectful to all these events happening and the suffering and the gore, so much gore. I'm being respectful, I'm there. So I find myself faced with this thing that I drew here. I see it in a flash, like clear as it can be. I'm thinking, okay, okay, I didn't know. So I assumed first that it's an alien.
Right.
It sure doesn't look like a human, but I see this person looks like this, so I'm being very respectful. We actually talked in the session. So I made this drawing. In the report, I call this person the hallway alien.
Okay.
And later, after feedback, when Fabian has told me what the target was, I look up more about this target. And I find this video, so I find this picture and this, then I realized this is my hallway alien. Yeah, like Fabian said, the hair that was only at the back, a little bit of hair here. And you can see that some hair has disappeared at the front. The teeth that were, let me read, it's awesome.
Oh, please do.
This is from the report, page 26 out of 31, so it's really in there. I saw this alien in the dark facility hallway. It was a full clear visual. It was an alien. Well, it sure doesn't look like a human. What would you call it? He has some of those yellow hairs at the back of his head, just a few. There were long, narrow teeth in the mouth, both upper and lower jaw, but the teeth are not sharp or pointy, just to make that clear. Its mouth was slightly open so that you could see into the mouth and see the teeth. This appeared to be its resting position for the mouth. Then we have, the alien was startling to see at first, but I remained calm. It looks a bit like a human that was burned on the face. It looks like an alien. They look scary, but I have to decide that this is still a person and that I can be respectful and learn to like it and put my stupid instincts aside. And so forth. It was really terrifying to see this remote viewing, and you see this person that's dead body.
Yes.
I was respectful. So
absolutely, as you always should be, and I appreciate that. Because you really do not know what you're looking at.
Yeah,
and it makes perfect sense. You're used to seeing aliens. I forgive the fact that you saw something like this, and the first thought was, when in the remote viewing cloud, that you're seeing an alien. But
well, it's a person.
You drew it.
It's a person, and if you saw this, you would not think that it looks like a human.
No.
So you call it the hallway alien.
Exactly.
But I would certainly be afraid of this. If I got a flash of this person's corpse, I would be afraid of it, and I may not recognize it as a person, as a human person, right away, because it does he does unfortunately look a little scary in this state.
Yeah, it looks like he's had a bad time.
Yeah, he has. I just
this is a female. This is the female. actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yes,
I knew it wasn't Dyatlov, but I wasn't sure who this was.
Okay.
Okay,
it's
so
the
this is one of the
woman.
women. Oh, poor
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Yikes.
I just want to say really quickly while Anita was talking, I had a sudden thought and I don't want to lose it. In your long report, you mentioned a lot of different things about facilities and hallways and rooms where people are removing organs and body parts and things that they don't need. And I suddenly thought, what if she's seeing their autopsies? What if you're seeing their autopsies being performed?
Yeah, could be.
So
That
that
is
was
another
a
possibility.
thought.
That's a strong possibility. Yeah.
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 Anyway, I just
However,
wanted to throw that out there.
however, during the process that I saw in the remote viewing where body parts were removed, some of the parts that were removed were the eyes.
Right.
So maybe not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true because the eyes would have already
And
gone.
and maybe this is the time to go into what the actual story was according to my session.
Oh,
Sure.
actually,
Oh,
before we go into that, I would love to show another image or two,
oh,
and
Yeah.
we can stop on those if you want to give detail. And then your story was very fascinating to me, and I think that your story is your interpretation of what the big mystery event was. So I'd like to come to that next, if that's okay.
yeah. And I'd like to see, I didn't get a chance to look at many of the images beyond this one, so I'd love to
Okay.
see that.
So I'm going to pull up some images here.
On this image, I was immediately drawn to the tree. Yeah, the tree of long pine needles, stem
Creepy.
covered in mosses. Yeah,
Okay.
there
I
were,
yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, I clearly saw that. I thought at the very end that this could be a cattle mutilation target, because I had several bodies that were found in the wilderness
Hmm.
that were like a mutilation, like the alien mutilation cases where you find cows that have parts missing. That's what I thought this Fabian's target would be. Except what puzzled me was that we were in the wilderness. We were not on a field where mutilated cows are usually found. We were in a forest with the mountains, which is correct for this target. So
Definitely.
I had a lot of impressions of various animals. I still can't explain. I didn't fully explore them either. So these are just the bits and pieces that I'm putting together.
Very good. And next, I'd like to go to this image here. I love that you've got the mountain out there. You've got it snow covered.
Yeah, and the slope with the rocks.
And the
Some
river.
creek and the creek. Yeah, river
Very
creek.
important to get this image in there because we want to see the landscape and the kind of area where we are. Now, I see you have the snow at only the top, and this target takes place over several seasons. So we have a time when maybe deaths happened that everything's snow covered, and then a later time when bodies were found and a lot of snow had melted, and we have running streams. So I really enjoyed that you just got this image out there to show us where this is happening.
Yeah, this one is very impactful to me too.
So after I had feedback from Fabian about what the target is, I looked more into it online, and I found a website which has allegedly, at least, has photographs of the dead bodies that were found, and this would allegedly at least be one of the bodies that were retrieved. And what I noticed when I saw this at feedback time was the visible veins, because I had this very interesting character, apart from the hallway alien, which had the yellow bits of hair and the teeth gaping open. I also had another very interesting character in my session, which was this big bloated kind of person, which had visible veins all over the body.
Wow.
Now, when I saw this on the website after the session, I recognized this to be that person in my report.
Shall I pull
In
that
my
other
report,
image up?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
now
can we see the drawing?
yeah. Now note the veins on the arms.
Yes. All right. So we see
So
those veins, and let's get that drawing.
yeah.
All right.
And he's hidden behind us.
And oh, on my screen, I've moved us out of the way.
Oh,
So
okay.
Yeah,
I
on
will
mine too.
body view.
Okay, great.
So yeah, so another interesting person that I encountered during this session was the one here on the upper right. And it also didn't quite look like a human. And in my report, I referred to him as the big baby because it had like the baby kind of shape. And what was interesting about him or her or it was that there were these visible veins everywhere. So I recognized this photograph to be my big baby in my session. Because you have to give everything a name. When you're remote viewing, you see a person or a thing, you don't know what it is. It's blurry and it could be something very mundane, ordinary from real life. But when you're remote viewing, you start out not knowing anything really. So you in other methods, they try to avoid giving things a label or a name. But in my remote viewing, I like to give everything a name so that I have a sense of what they are and I get familiar with them. So this one I named the big baby.
Yes.
So, and there on the lower right, you see the first drawing that I made of the hallway alien, which we also saw a feedback picture for which would be the woman with the
Yes.
teeth constantly gaping, showing, and the coloration of the patchy skin and the lines on the face and the just a little bit of hair at the back.
Mhm.
So it was interesting seeing these, what I now know to be dead bodies, which are the target people. But when you encounter them and you see these bodies in this state, it's very interesting. And you're wondering if they're aliens or what are they, because they don't look quite human.
Yes. And regardless of what you name them, or if you don't know if they're human or alien, what matters are the details that you drew in. So, like the veins, you very clearly on what you call the big baby, the thing that you made sure to draw in there was the one important thing for you to be able to identify it in feedback, and that's the veins throughout the body.
Yeah.
So that was
Also,
a very good detail.
also mention that the two other very strange drawings. It's when I remote view, it's like building a puzzle. You see bits and pieces, and you don't really know what shape is where. So these are earlier drawings of some kind of a life form, which I think I still don't fully understand.
Yeah.
But the two on the right are more complete and are based on clearer, fuller visuals. So I get bizarre shapes and colors and sensations in the beginning. It's very psychedelic what I'm drawing and describing. But as I keep going, I will end up with a full visual where I see everything perfectly clear. So it's just me working forwards on this one.
Okay.
Plus, for me as a non-remote viewer, I don't know. Like I have a little bit of skill in two-dimensional art, but I can't imagine how difficult it must be to take a flash of an image that you see in your mind and then try to get that on paper.
So you get bits and
So it must
pieces
be
at
difficult.
first.
Yeah.
You get bits and pieces. All I know in the beginning is when I have a life form, all I get is, with my RV method, remote viewing method, is a red irregular shape. I don't see any clear focus. I don't see any skin color or hair or eyes or anything. It's just a red blur, and I have to keep working at it to start getting some bits and pieces, and eventually I get a flash image that shows me clear full image, but it takes work.
So those are your red life form impressions that you initially get. And then is the orange the object first impression?
So this is my very first drawing. This
Wow.
is the initial elements. This is what I get from the start. This is what I have to work with to begin with. So the red one is my life form element. It just looks like a red shape. I know it's a life form. That's what it looks like initially, and it's red. And there's the orange, which is the thing that I would call cling wrap in the session, which wrapped around them and made it difficult for them to breathe. And they couldn't talk and they were struggling in it. And then we have two other shapes. The big urn type is the elevator that I called elevator, that they would end up, I still struggle with words as to what it is, but that's the elevator one. And then some kind of a metallic box. So those are the initial impressions, the initial elements. That's what it looks like.
Wow.
Okay.
So
Oh.
I went from this red thing to the drawing we saw that was of the full body.
Wow.
It goes so long, stepwise.
Yeah,
Wow.
I bet.
Well, it's interesting seeing the process here.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the second drawing I made very early in the session. So you can see that I've taken the initial elements drawing and I've added onto it. So I first have the initial elements, which I described previously, the red, the orange, the urn, and the metal box. And I start to probe them. I start to investigate, touch them a little, feel them around, see what do I have here. It's still bits and pieces, as you can see, but I'm starting to add components to them. Now, I still don't fully understand what these eyes are. I could read a little bit about it. I highlight it in the report.
It's interesting that eyes are such a prevalent part of this whole mystery.
That's true.
Eyes
Yeah.
just keep coming up as an issue.
Yeah.
These eye things are let's see. I call them, okay, here they are. There's some kind of a suction device and something is eating. Something is suctioning food particles in, and it deals with this weird thing with eyes. Also, I could add about the elevator thing, the urn. The elevator, there's a life form that screams and tries to get loose, and its hair got stuck. And then the life form got thrown into this elevator. Now, here's where we're starting. Now we start getting into things that we don't have from feedback, things that seem completely weird and unusual, and we don't know. So we have a lot of things that are confirmed by feedback already that we discussed. Now we're going to see other things that we don't know. There's no record. So this urn thing, the elevator, as I call it, then the life form got thrown into this elevator. The elevator makes a hum sound and seems to be moving mechanically from up towards down. It captures living beings and makes them suffer. It takes their noses out, takes their hair off. It is a shaving device. Metallic is inside. It acts like pincers. There are screams heard around. I see many small animals helplessly on the ground, spaced apart somewhat from each other around this white pocket element or this elevator or urn, not knowing what to call it.
Mm-hmm.
The animals seem alive and are lying on their sides in a fetal position and are making some complaining, crying animal sounds. It looks like a herd of animals that got struck down is what it looks like. This has to do with eating. This is an eating device. It can pick what it wants to eat, where it wants to go. It hunts. It tries to eat them. This is all very bizarre.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Ooh, disturbing, to say the least.
Very much. All right.
And these orange balls with to them too, these orange spheres are very central to what I would begin to uncover in the session. Let me read in the first probes that I did so I have these orange balls. So, and I'm probing them early in the session, like, what is this? What do I have here with these orange spheres? So they go inside the metal box. I'm just taking bits from the report, not everything. We can eat them. These are a snack. They are mealtime enemies. They are made of blubber. We are interested in them. They belong to a life form that was cut open. The life form that was cut open, they are blubber, made of like a pig's fat, Cookie Krispies, an ointment from a pig, a blubber fat. it is the valuable item here, something of value. What is inside it is what is coveted here. So this orange turned out to be fat from the bodies of the victim, and Fabian will tell me when we get in, when it's the right time to get to the story here of what's
Yes,
actually going on.
I
That it
feel
deals with
like,
this fat.
yes, what I'd like to do is maybe pull up the entrance and tunnel next.
Right.
And because I feel like that'll be our transition.
Okay.
All right, now here we are at our what appears to be our man-made aspect of this target, the unknown man-made.
Yeah.
So
So,
exploring this target for some 2 days, which is a lot of work and a lot of hours. Much of it happened outdoors in the forest, where there's the mountain with the snow on top of the mountain and the trees and the river or creek. But an important component of the story that I was having unfolding happened inside of this facility. Now, the facility has an entrance to go into the entrance hall. So you can go from the outdoors, you can go through the entrance, and you find yourself in a room, which is the entrance room. And right there, as soon as I'm in the entrance room, there are beings there, or people, life forms. And they seem, in the session at least, to be sentient of me. So they talk to me. And someone is there as a guard and doesn't want anyone to go further inside the facility. I have a lot of conversation that I wrote in the report where we're speaking with each other. This facility, one room I should mention, was interesting because when I went, I saw a room clearly, as clearly as my room now, almost. Not as big field of view, smaller portion, but as clearly as I see now. And I saw that it was old-fashioned, like early 1900s, because of the type of plastic feel of furniture and different materials and colors, kind of red, orange, brown. And I wrote that in the report, that it was like early 1900s, which turns out is very fitting for the late 1950s.
Yeah.
And it was a room with a desk and a chair and kind of an office kind of place. So it was a facility with rooms. This facility, where do I start?
Yeah,
I'll
there's so
just go.
much.
I'll just say what's there.
yes. Yeah.
I'll try to not have my logic question or try to make sense or justify any of it. Here we go. There are doors that are huge, and they operate with a hydraulic press valve. They have like cylinders, pistons in the doors, and it uses air pressure to seal the doors. They're massive. It's a very strong locking mechanism.
That's crazy.
And you cannot push it open if the air pressure is different. It needs to be opened the right way. So it's a very strong, secure airlock that locks the doors, these massive doors, valve doors. There's one door that had a warning sign posted next to the door that says something like "Danger, do not enter."
It's starting to sound like a bunker to me.
And I did get the impression,
I,
yes, from reading your session, I got the impression that this was like a facility underneath the ground, like near or on that mountain.
yeah. So I find this door. I'm already inside the facility, right?
Right.
So I find another door in there with this military type or just a strict sign that says warning, don't enter. I may have written in my report what it actually said. So obviously I enter. And this whole room, it leads to a small room which is filled with acid. And my skin starts to dissolve and burn from the acid. There's acid in the whole air.
Wow.
I end up getting the impression that this room is a safety mechanism, kind of like, you know, old movies where tomb explorers have to
You
go
break
through the
into
trap.
the pyramid, and then there's behind an
Yes,
acid trap.
all these trap rooms, and if you
Yes.
survive, you won't
Wow.
survive the
Well,
traps.
a security barrier or for people who stumble into this.
A room with a warning sign, don't enter.
Right.
But if you do enter, it's filled with acid and you will dissolve. So my
Ooh.
body started dissolving as I was standing there.
Hmm.
So obviously I go through the next door. It's a small room, but if you make it through the next door, which I did, there's a big facility and there's no more acid.
Okay.
And there were lots of people or beings there, and they saw me and we spoke. And they have various rooms. They have like a shower room where they can clean themselves. There's a big dining room where they're eating. And I saw a wall which is really, really, really tall, and it drops straight down, and it just has these windows, so it's like apartments
Wow.
where they live, I think. This huge facility with everything they need, big population to live and eat and have homes and shower. It seemed to me like aliens, but I don't really know what they were. And they have queens there, and they're guarding their queens. And I was not allowed to go anywhere closer toward their queens. Now, at first, the guard who was in the entrance hall forbade me from going anywhere further. But once we talked a bit, he actually guided me through the dining rooms and the different rooms and showed me around, and we became friends, I would say. Now, the interesting thing is there's more rooms here.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we really need to get into what the story is. We still
Yes.
haven't gotten to that,
So
because
I
then
say
I
we
will describe the other rooms that I still haven't
sounds good.
described.
I say we get into the story, but first, I'd like you to explain when you say how you're interacting with these people. We'll call them people for now, these beings. You're interacting with them. Now, of course, this is the 1950s. So when you say you're interacting, now I have an idea of where we're going with this, but for viewers who this is their first time hearing about remote viewing sessions, when you're when you're interacting with a being at your remote viewing site, people will be wondering, uh, well, how is that possible? Is she traveling time? Is she astral projecting? How are those beings knowing she's there? How would you explain your interaction with these beings?
It's kind of like dreamlike, kind of like when you're asleep at night and you can be in different places and you can talk to beings or people in your dreams. You can do everything in a dream. So when you're remote viewing, you can also, well, not as in dreams you can do anything, even things that aren't possible. In remote viewing, it's a bit more limited, like real life is. I don't think, well, maybe not. I was about to say I don't think I could fly, but I can fly when I remote view. I can go up in the sky. But it's kind of dream-like. It's like I'm there. I'm here, but I'm also there. It's kind of astral projection. I think I'm doing astral projection, that part of my consciousness or astral body, or the body that we roam around in when we dream goes to somewhere else, is what I think. And it travels in time and space. And whether it's real or it's a simulation, the life forms at target sites, they see me and we talk to each other.
Okay. All
Wow.
right. And I've
It's
heard
just
it.
what it is.
I have heard it explained by other remote viewers also that when you interact with a being at the target site, it's not necessarily that that being knows you're there, like in their waking state, but sometimes it's almost like interacting with their subconscious, knowing like if there's a subconscious kind of field about them, you can probe into sort of the way they think and interact with that rather than interacting with them directly. But I'm digressing. I just wanted to go into that a little bit to understand better about your interaction.
Well, that's a helpful explanation for me as someone who has very limited experience with it. And for, I'm sure there may be some people viewing this right now that don't have a lot of remote viewing experience. So that explanation helped me a lot. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Yes, yes. I wanted to slow that down.
That's
Now,
great.
Anita, for us to go into the story, are there any particular images you need shown, or can I stop the screen share so we can look at each other and discuss?
Mm.
Are there any more facility type pictures? I remember something that struck me in your notes about the perhaps the outside or the entryway into this facility was like there was like a sheer cliff and it was possibly in between, like in a little canyon kind of thing. And I found that to be pretty interesting. So that could indicate to me that this facility is close by, that it's somewhere in the
I
mountain.
have a sense that it's in part of a mountain, is what
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah. That's the sense I had.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we don't really need the other pictures so much.
Okay.
Did we
All
show
right.
the mountain already?
Yes,
We did.
showed the mountain. So I'm going to stop the screen share so we can discuss the story and then our conclusions on what
Yeah.
we think based on this remote viewing.
Great.
Eek.
All right. So we are back and I
Who's
think,
gonna tell the story?
all right, go for it.
Okay.
You and Fabian can definitely take that.
So it seems that they're being eaten.
Yikes. Mm.
It's the report. The logical part of me struggles to make such a conclusion, but the report very strongly indicates that these life forms, these victims, were targeted by a predator which hunts them in order to extract their fat and eat the fat.
Wow.
They, or at least part of them, but I think their entire bodies would have, according to the RV, remote viewing, would have been taken to the facility where some kind of process is done to the body, which I watched it very clearly happen, causes the fat, which covers our body, to melt or come loose and start to sink out through the skin. And this was suctioned with a suctioning device, collected the fat.
Mm.
And the other parts I watched, but that could have been from the later autopsy, but I don't think so because they were found without their eyeballs.
Right.
But I saw during this process that parts of their bodies that they don't want to keep, that they don't need, like trash, like the eyeballs and other parts were just removed. The eyeballs taken out, scissor cut the stringy bits behind the eye, remove the eyes. We don't need it. It's garbage.
Ooh.
And then I don't fully understand the feedback, because from what it seems like their organs would have still been in the body because they would have been listed otherwise. But I saw bodies that end up being just a rib cage almost. No head. The head was always removed.
Oh,
All
that's
the organs inside the rib cage removed, the legs removed. I think the arms were removed, the eyeballs obviously from the head. And just this hacking and chopping, butchering of these bodies. And you end up with just this torso of a rib cage and such. This was hung up. Several of them I saw in a room in the facility.
Oh.
These rib cage that you end up with, and it's open at the ribs.
Mm.
You can see into the rib cage that it's empty. I saw this, and these empty shells of more or less just a rib cage. These were hung from the ceiling on some kind of hooks, several of them in a storage. These are later still hanging from the ceiling on this wire or whatever, and they are moved to another in a room which has a huge swimming pool. So let's talk about the swim. Oh, let's read this. This. Please have patience. This is
Sure.
the interesting.
Mhm.
This is the good stuff. I mean, this is where it's. We need to read this. I go inside. This is from report. I go inside to the interior and I face the door. It feels different in here, cold and blue and black and dark and smooth and silky. The air feels thinner and smooth. Something soothing about being in this place with the light and the air and the magnetism. It feels different than the outside. Someone is fighting with another life form inside. You have bulbous fat, a black bipedal life form tells me. Haha, that's scary because these, let's just go with the report. I'm not going to filter anything. So we have these life forms in this facility and they consume the fat
Okay.
from our victims, from the humans. So one of them sees me during the session and comments that I have fat. So that's kind of uncomfortable, considering they would eat that.
Yeah.
So one of them commented on my fat.
Rude.
The same one, okay. Yes, these people or aliens, whoever they were, that lived in the facility, they were constantly pooing or peeing and or both on the floor where they stand.
Wow.
I saw that whole
Okay.
session, and the floors were covered in latrine. And you know
Oh.
what's interesting? I haven't read a lot about stories about alien bases on Earth, but something that people have reported is that the aliens do that.
Huh.
So, but whoever these humans or aliens were in my session, they were just using the floor as a toilet where they stand. And this was very natural to them. I watched it many times. And the floors were covered in
Oh.
this latrine.
Yeah.
It was like a stable floors. Oh yes. So
Terrible
I'm in
workplace
this
environment.
Yeah.
for me or for them. For them it's normal.
Yeah.
There is poo on the floor, latrine. It is almost liquid or muddy in consistency.
Mm-mm.
There's a swimming pool nearby. Now we get it. The water moves about and glimmers as it reflects light. A massive building complex. The ceiling is high with many spotlight lamps. The swimming pool is huge in this room. I dip a finger into the pool water, and it registers as, meaning it seems to me, as acidic, which with H plus ions, which is the chemistry definition of acid, and the water would burn my skin off.
Mm.
This water, reading from my report still, is used to dissolve things with. I have a feeling that remnants of body parts would be dropped in here to dissolve it with. Do we have more about the swimming pool? No, that was it. So I'm almost bilocating, which is when a remote viewer finds that they almost will have the experience. Well, a bilocation means you're there. Like when you're dreaming, you are there, not here. So I'm almost bilocating and I'm finding this big swimming pool. And I squat down to take a look at the water. So I find out it's acidic. So I had the sense that I think I also saw, I recall that I also saw that these rib cages were then lowered into the acid to dissolve them and dispose of them. So this facility had this operation where bodies, and this includes at least the bodies of our victims, which we now know are the Russian young people who were the victims in the story, that the fat is harvested from the bodies in order for these beings to consume it, and or people, and then there's this whole process of removing the unwanted bits of basically a butcher, and the rib cage, hang them up, and and then lower it into acid to dispose of. So that's
Go ahead, sorry.
That's the story I had, that they were eaten, they were hunted to eat the fat.
So
it's all over the report.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I have a hard time reconciling everything that you saw with the fact that their bodies weren't chopped up and eaten, that they were still essentially located on the mountain. And
could have been the other.
Yeah, go ahead.
There were lots. The room had many bodies, so it could have been. Yeah, I also describe somewhere in my report that someone put the bodies on the forest path to be found or such.
Wow.
I do see bodies on the forest trails that once they are dead. So that's also in my report. Somewhere in my report that these were supposed to be found and seen.
Wow.
So those could have been other victims.
Yeah.
There were many. It was a whole operation.
Wow. So you saw pretty much the whole operation from start to finish, the whole process that some of the bodies would go through. Wow.
Wild.
So Fabian, what are your interpretations of how do you feel about this data? What do you think happened?
Well, this is my first time hearing your description of that. When I read your report, I had a slightly different interpretation. But of course, I wasn't bilocating and there to see these things. As I read your words, what I followed was a very strange event at the campsite itself. The kids are running. I call them kids because these are young campers.
They're in their early 20s, yeah.
Yes.
Basically
and
kids.
What I took from it seemed like there was a military or some sort of base under the ground that I got the impression maybe the base was trying to, honestly, I think the impression I got was that the base had something to do with some kind of a biological warfare type thing where there was some kind of animal or some kind of living thing that was not normal, that this base, the people who call them military, navy, whatever they might have been, they were dealing with some kind of very strange animal, something that they might have modified, and that this animal possibly came in contact with some of these campers, is the impression I got. That this military base, which was inhabited by military personnel, they didn't necessarily know that these campers were there. They were doing tests with this strange animal that they were working with. The animal seemed to perhaps have gotten loose. They had maybe intended for that animal to be eating regular forest animals in the area. Which is why in your session there were so many dead animal bodies of different sorts. My impression was that some weirdo creature got a hold of other animals, and maybe the military was watching what it did to these other animals. And while watching this process, human campers managed to be in this area at the wrong time, and something, whatever this weirdo animal was, it got them. The military was aware of this weird animal, didn't know about the campers, and bad things ensued as a result. And then, of course, the military had to cover up that they might have been dealing with some kind of a biological uh, mistake or potential weapon.
A bioweapon.
So, and,
I
and so they had to put the bodies back out. And this is why we have military personnel attending
Mm.
the funerals of these
And
people.
participating in the search.
Exactly. So they're wanting to cover up something that happened out there. As for what actually happened, I think a lot of the conspiracy theorists have said they're thinking that this was a military operation that went wrong or something. You have seemingly found a base in this mountainous area, which actually makes perfect sense to me. When you look at where top secret military bases would be, here in America, the bases are in the middle of the desert where nobody lives. And so when you're talking about Siberia, what a perfect place for military operations that ideally no people will ever be around to see. So on the occasion, you have a bunch of 20 somethings going deep into the wilderness, that they are crossing over into Area 51 style territory.
Yeah.
So I got the impression that this, and my logic kind of put it together as this was not a place meant for people, outsiders outside of military operations, and some these kids got caught up in something very negative.
Where
Uh,
they shouldn't have been.
exactly. So that's the impression I got, that there was something of a underground base situation
And
where
perhaps
some
this
kind of thing was going on and things went wrong.
yeah. And so perhaps this bioweapon creature, whatever you're thinking about, perhaps it subsists primarily on fat.
Hmm.
And perhaps we're seeing meals being prepared for it, or perhaps how it uh, prepares its own meals or whatever inside the facility. Because
And
there's a
there
lot of
were,
reference to eating and to consuming and to the fat processing in the notes.
mhm.
So that
And
yeah.
knowing how remote viewing can be sometimes. Sometimes, often in my remote viewing sessions, I see that things are not always literal.
Mm.
Absolutely not literal. Where something I might perceive as an animal running around doing damage could actually be something more on the biological level, as of microbes or chemical reactions that I think are monstrous. So when so yeah, it's so weird how remote viewing works, where something seems literal but it's absolutely not, where it could have just been something as simple as something that would, like acid, burn away fats, eyeballs, various parts of the human body. So that, now I know that's starting to go against what some of the session data was saying, but that's just my personal experience in RV, is that um, something might appear to be a creature that might be mechanical or something else. So that's just what I took from some of what I read, as I read it very loosely. And it
Yeah.
was 31 pages, so that was my 31-page skim and quick interpretation.
True.
I have Navy written 27 times in the report. I didn't mention it. There's just so much in this report. I'm trying to pick one thing and to talk about it.
Hmm.
But the Navy is 27 times, and they were very present.
Yeah.
Or I call it Navy. It feels like Navy, which could mean just military.
Mm.
Um, that I do have in the report that there was weapons testing, and
Yes, I saw that.
that the weapon melts the fat in a body. So
Wow.
this again deals with the fat separating from the body.
Hmm.
Or like I have watched a process where in the bodies the fat separates, melts from the body, and it can be harvested. So one piece of this story in the text report is that the Navy, as they felt like, had weapons testing Where did I write that?
And while you're looking for that, I'll just say that, fat is very yellow. And you mentioned orangish spheres many
Yeah,
times
that was the
also in your
fat.
notes. So that could make sense. That could very easily be fat droplets or globules.
Yeah.
That could be the representation
Here,
of that.
here we have the Navy is involved. This is from the report. We can just, there's so many chapters in the text.
Yeah.
A Navy is involved, is collaborating. The Navy are testing weapons. This was a military weapon shooting that went into a forest. A victory was had. There is a feeling of elation from the Navy. They seem happy and celebrating a success. There is a military weapon that can shoot long distances. They use a collar to track it. They use a radiation masked device. They pick up the shrapnel then. I saw how they drive with a car and came here and picked up the pieces of the victims. I've seen that as well.
And you just said that they use a collar to track it. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
there was
Okay.
something. So the military in the session, they were using a long range weapon, and the site that they will target has a collar of some kind, which is tracked with a radio to find the location.
Wow.
Maybe on a live form. They use a radiation mask device. They have to study long range distance weapons. They don't know that an animal can't breathe because of it. So it was also this sensation that an animal of some kind would have had a collar that they can track it, and that maybe they were targeting the animal. I'm not entirely sure. It's bits and pieces.
And you also mentioning the idea of this weapon in conjunction with they don't know an animal can't breathe is making me think of the state of at least one of the bodies that was found where lungs had been collapsed.
Two of the victims had crushed chests. And the strange thing about that was that there was no external bruising on the body, so it would be virtually not impossible, but very difficult to cause all of your ribs to be broken and crushed in without damaging the skin or the muscle on the surface. The only time that that would happen in a way that we currently understand is if you were using some sort of sonic weapon or if it was like a bomb shockwave. So that was a really odd thing. One of the many really odd things that made this case so famous was the two people with the crushed chests.
Yeah.
I also have something was molten with a Navy technology weapon. And yeah, it was also part of the story. I struggle with piecing everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
honestly,
I
that
think
sentence
everybody
right
does.
there, that sentence that you just said, defines the Dyatlov Pass incident perfectly. It is such a complex story, and there's just so many details about it. And every time you think you have it figured out, there's another little bit of information that just doesn't fit into the puzzle. And it's such a frustrating mystery. So
Yes.
no wonder you had 30 some pages
Yeah.
of
And
information about
I
it.
think we're gonna try and start wrapping up here. But what I'm really enjoying is that we are getting pointed in a direction with this remote viewing session. So we are starting to, I think, get answers as to why was military helping with the search. When people go missing, the military doesn't usually jump in on that
And
for
help. Yeah.
college students. And same thing, why did the military show up at the funerals? So so now I think we're starting to pull together a few more elements of things that seem consistent with certain conspiracy theories. But I love that Anita had no idea going into this target what it was. With no idea, it's a little less biased.
Yes.
So it helps to get pointed at least in a direction. Now apparently, we don't know the exact nature of why the military would be in this area. But I like that we have that direction now.
Yeah. Whether it is a human military or not terrestrial origin military presence, who knows? But there seems to be a lot of indication that that's what's going on in your notes. that it's some kind of facility and probably military presence. I found that those are my big takeaways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was my same takeaways. Anything you want to say in closing here, Anita?
I still don't understand. Like, I can only go by my session, not from feedback as to, I trust my remote viewing, and the feedback portion has strongly indicated I was at the right target site. So I don't understand. I have this feeling that I'm familiar with everything that I was watching and remote viewing, but I don't fully understand. To me, it seems that they were hunted and eaten. And there is this facility involved, and it did have a military presence. I don't really mention it because I focus on the beings that are in the facility. The main characters in the story are the victims, and then the people that live in the facility. The military is in the report, but it's not the main character. I don't know. And this one puzzles me. It's very overwhelming and emotional. All the screams I've heard and all the gory bits that I've watched, the eyes removed and the fat melting, and it's just, I don't fully have a clear, concise summary on this. I just have what I've seen and experienced.
Well, then it sounds like you correctly remote viewed the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Yes. Overwhelming and visceral and disturbing all around.
In the end, that's what everybody seems to agree on. So successful remote viewing,
Yes.
even though we don't have a lot of answers and it's chaotic, that just says, hey, you looked at the same thing everybody else is looking at and you're trying to piece it together. So, wow. So, well, great job.
Yes.
And thank you for taking the time to remote view this for us and for our podcast here.
Yeah.
And we will find a way to as easily as possible include your full length report so that people can read it if they're interested, because there's just a lot of great nuggets in there, and I want everybody to be able to read that if they would like to.
Yeah, it's a great little novel. So anybody who if somebody wants to sit down and really comb through it, somebody might be able to put something together that's a truly amazing story and then post it in our comments.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, I think that is probably about the end of our episode here. So I'm going to stop recording. Thank you both so much for making this a really awesome
Anita, mostly for all of your time and effort and energy. Thank you so much for doing this and remote viewing. One of my most favorite is the wrong word, but one of the mysteries that I am most intrigued by and that sticks with me the most. So thank you so much. I appreciate all your time and effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, you researched it a lot as well for weeks.
Yes.
And we are on a 5 or 6 hour time difference.
It's 11:30 here.
Oh my. Okay, and it is okay, it is 5:30 here. So
so it's bedtime for you and dinner time for us.
Thank you for staying up late with us tonight.
No, I'll be up a few more hours.
Okay. You're a late night girly like me. I love it.
Yes.
That's
all
great.
right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording here. And thank you again. Thank you for watching.